Odds are, if you follow me on social media, you know that Marshall is my favorite team. Sure, by the title of this video, you think I'm very biased. I'm going to give you 3 legitimate reasons why Marshall might make the college football playoffs this season. Let's go ahead and get started here with their offensive talent, led by quarterback Carlos Wilson. Tossed for 2,000 yards, had a 67% completion percentage, tossed for 17 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Though Wilson had 660 rushing yards last year, that is a single season record for a Marshall quarterback. Wilson is one of the best returning quarterbacks in the group of 6, and I think he's going to have even better numbers this year with his receiving cast, led by one of the nation's most underrated tight ends, Toby Payne. If you're a Marshall fan, you know how underutilized Toby Payne is. He had 27 receptions for 393 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. Tamarez had over 30 receptions, nearly 400 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Adrian Norton joined Marshall last year, with a year prior he was with Akron. He had 27 receptions for 363 yards and 5 touchdowns from Marshall last year. I'm super high on Adrian Norton this year in this Marshall offense, and I think his numbers are going to double compared to what it was last season. And they also bring in VMI transfer wide receiver Owen Sweeney, who last year had 44 receptions, had over 700 yards, averaged 16 yards per catch, and had 5 touchdowns. I don't think this is a stretch to say this is the best quarterback Marshall's had in Carlos Wilson since Raheem Cato, and I think this might be the best supporting cast a Marshall offense has had, probably since Raheem Cato as well. And that was in 2014. There's so much hype around this Marshall offense, deservingly so. And Marshall's offense was pretty good last year when Carlos Wilson started, but one thing that wasn't so good was Marshall's defense. They gave up 30.3 points per game last season. That was 109th in the country. And they bring in Brad Lambert, and if you're not a Marshall fan, you don't realize the significance of this hiring. Now, Lambert's already been with Marshall in 2 previous stints. He was with Marshall from 1990 to 1995, and he was Marshall's defensive coordinator in 2019 and 2020, where in 2020, he led the Thorny Herd to have the best defense in the country. They had the best scoring defense in the country, allowing just 13 points a game. They only gave up 8 touchdowns in 10 games, the 4th best run defense, 11th best pass defense, and gave up just the 2nd fewest yards per game. And statistically, Marshall's defense was not good last year, but they have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. Gilmore had 10 tackles for loss last year. Braden Ward had 6.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. Daquan Smith returns, who had 50 tackles and 3 interceptions. And it was recently announced that Boogie Trotter will get an extra year of eligibility. The Marshall defensive back had 70 tackles and 5 interceptions last season. We've seen what Brad Lambert can do to a Marshall defense. He can completely turn it around, and I don't expect anything less this year. This defense is going to be significantly better compared to last season, and it should be towards the top of the Sun Belt standings. And the third and final reason why Marshall might make the college football playoffs this year is because they have a very easy schedule. Their schedule consists of at Penn State, host Middle Tennessee, at Missouri State, host Gardner-Webb, at James Madison, host Coastal Carolina, host South Alabama, at Old Dominion, at Georgia Southern, host Appalachian State, host Georgia State, and to close out the year, they go on the road to Louisiana Monroe. So Marshall starts off the year at Penn State, and nobody's giving Marshall a chance in this contest. The spread started off at 23.5, and on some betting websites, it's all the way up to 25.5 now, which I think is incredibly stupid when you look at Marshall, their last 5 games against Power 4 opponents. They're undefeated against the spread and have 2 outright wins. Marshall is fantastic when they play Power 4 opponents. Since 2013, Marshall has beat Maryland, Purdue, Virginia Tech, and Notre Dame. And I think Penn State is so overrated this season. And a lot of the reason why people have Penn State winning so many games this year is not because they have such a talented roster. It's just because they have a very easy schedule. And when you're looking at this Marshall game, to me, this is so similar to when they beat Notre Dame a couple years ago. Marshall's second-year head coach going up against the Power 4 opponents' first year as a head coach of that program. Nobody's giving Marshall a shot. When Marshall beat Notre Dame a couple years ago, we had Henry Colombi at quarterback. Words cannot describe how much better and how much overall talent this offense has in the roster that beat Notre Dame. This game is going to be so much closer than what people think. And I know it sounds crazy. I would not be shocked at all if Marshall upset Penn State. Another notable game here is at James Madison. They are 70-7 at home since 2015. And since joining the Sun Belt in 2022, they are 22-3 at home. 22-3 at home since 2022. 2 of those 3 losses are against Marshall. Marshall has James Madison's number when it comes to playing at the Dukes. James Madison returns just 5 starters from last year's team. I don't think JMU is going to be quite as good as sports analysts are thinking. Another noteworthy game is at Old Dominion. Old Dominion has got to be one of the most overrated teams in college football. Old Dominion was 10-3 last season, had their best year ever since joining the FBS in 2014. Despite having a historic season for the Monarch standards, Marshall still humiliated them 48-24, and last year was the worst record Marshall had since 2016. There's no reason ODU should have lost to Marshall last year, and Marshall beat ODU at their highest, and Marshall's better now. I think Marshall is going to beat the Monarchs once again. Marshall has always had Old Dominion's number. Marshall was 10-1 against Old Dominion. It's also worth noting Old Dominion has just one returning offensive starter. I think they're overhyped. They don't have much returning production, and I think they're getting way too much attention when it comes to the Sun Belt. One final game here, though, is a game I don't think anybody's talking about, and this is the game I could see Marshall slipping up here, and that is at Georgia Southern. This is a November 7th matchup, and this date is very, very important because it is the week before Marshall's plane crash anniversary game against Appalachian State. Appalachian State is arguably Marshall's biggest rival in the Sun Belt, and when you're looking at Georgia Southern, they've had Marshall's number here recently. They've won the last 2 games against the Herd, combined by just total as 6 points. They blew a 3-possession lead in 2024, and last year, though Rhea Wilson was not 100% in the season finale, the fact that this is the week before Appalachian State and the week before the plane crash game, I could see Marshall overlooking Georgia Southern here. This feels like definitely a potential trap game for the Herd. But when you're looking at this Marshall schedule, by no means do I think it's hard at all. In lots of rankings, Marshall is considered to have the easiest schedule in the Sun Belt. I think Marshall is capable of winning anywhere from 9 to 11 games this season. And if they go 11-1, I think the College Football Playoff Committee will have some very interesting choices to make. But watch out for this Marshall Thundering Herd team. I think they are severely underrated. Nobody is talking about them, and I don't understand why. They are without question one of the most slept-on teams in college football this season. Comment your thoughts on this video and comment how many wins you think Marshall will get this year. That about does it for this video. If you're new to my channel or you've seen my videos before, make sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time on the Sports 2 Show.